All right. Welcome. As you know me as Lasso, for those who don't, welcome. If it's your first time, welcome to the channel, Lasso's Passions. One of my passions is having these discussions going in deep in different topics. We've done around 7 different topics, and I thought it was time to kind of do a master class, in a sense, master class over all the topics that I went over these last couple of weeks during the podcast. It just made sense. I came to the conclusion every topic just came naturally to me day to day. Sometimes I took a break in between things, and then if I got a little burnt out, I needed a break. I take a break because sometimes I'm not just focusing on the podcast. I'm also focusing on how to grow the YouTube channel by different means. I'm really looking at different methods, experimenting. So all day from morning from 2 a.m. till like 6 a.m. I'm working on YouTube. I kid you not. And that time, little time I have to sleep, I try to sleep, and sometimes all I do is turn over and wrestle and turn over, wrestle, turn, wrestle. It's kind of it's been hard to get some sleep. I may end up going to Walmart and getting like melatonin or something to see if that helps. But I don't know. I don't take anything right now, so to start kind of scares me. It kind of scares me to start doing it. I have my board right here that I'm going to use to probably shift the camera to here when I'm using the board. I don't know if there's a way I can get it closer. I don't know, but there it is. I'll write things out here. Hopefully it makes sense. Because I have 7 key points that I want to go over, and I'm going to give you a little spiel about what we're talking about today. The topic today is the evolution, right, of the highly achieving man, coming from a state of of no motion, right, no momentum, nothing going on, right, you know, no direction placed, no goals placed, just kind of floating and having other people decide for you and take care of you. It's what they call going from a child to a man, basically. And this is basically a whole discussion going over every little key element that's been a main topic of the podcast. So every podcast we've done is a main topic, and then now we're doing a whole overview. Um, so one of the biggest things about I got my notes here. One of the biggest things about a highly achieving man is that they take charge of their life. That is a must. It's mandatory. There's no a way around that. What that means is taking control and picking up your responsibilities, and really juggling them yourself. You know what I'm saying? We are, in a lot of senses, why, and to me, this is such an important topic because for me personally, I can look back and say, well, I'm a little embarrassed. I'm 38 years old and I don't feel like a man. Yes, I'm old, and yes, I can do all the things that men do, but at the end of the day, I feel trapped in this like man-child prison that was kind of built for me, and a lot of it isn't my fault. It's like we're conditioned from childhood, in schools, people play like organizations that tell us that it's okay to be you. And imagine if you is like this weak child who can't decide for yourself and make decisions. But the thing is, what happens is bosses and employers end up being your parent replacements. You replace your parents with employers, and those, in a lot of sense, they become your daddies and your mommies. And because you still haven't been able to take fully control of your own life in a way, in a financial way that is separate from having to be under somebody else's control. In a lot of senses, that means becoming an entrepreneur, a freelancer, your own business person. You start your own business, that kind of thing. Which is a topic in itself, which we might do a whole. Since we're doing a whole master class on this, we might do a whole class on business and that kind of thing, adulting and that kind of thing, and the financial. Because there's three areas that require adulting, which is politics, which means you move away from the government, which means you're taking more responsibility of your life and relying less on a separate entity like the government to help you out, which can be a lot, can be difficult for people who are in really bad health situations, which is another key thing. Another area of life that adults take control of their lives is the health area. If you are relying until you get sick to go to a doctor, you're not being a man about being responsible, or a woman about being healthy. That is something you take control. That is something you do. Maintenance, workouts, food choices, making sure you don't eat too many things that just rip your gut apart. Uh, really burn and bruise your esophagus with heartburn, stuff like that. You're hurting your body essentially, and you're trading off immediate pleasure of cream or whatever it is you're eating, immediate pleasure in the taste buds, for later really getting hurt in the stomach where it counts. So it's a trick. Don't trick your mind to think that, like poison ivy, think like it's poison ivy. When you touch poison ivy, you don't see the effects till later, and you know that. So think of food in that manner, where you look at it and go, oh, this is going to hurt me later. So look at it as poison. Honestly, just look at it as poison. If you know it's going to hurt you, why do it? Why allow emotion in control of you? That's another thing that the high achieving man doesn't allow emotions to take control of your thinking, of where you decide to go now. It can be in total anger and complete the most, like, the thing that you don't even want to do, but you're in anger and you're emotional, so you lose control. And being a man, achieving man, is that you don't lose control. You don't lose control. You never lose control. That's what it means to be a high achieving man. Which means you don't lose control of the direction of where you're going as well. That's important. That's important for a man to take direction, be the captain of where his life is going, and not just flowing anywhere and going with the crowd, and the crowd is being pushed by other people and other organizations, not really thinking for themselves. You know what I mean? It's easy to fall in that trap because it's easy. It's mindless. When you're not having to think for yourself and you're in a mindless state, they call it a zombie. That's what they call zombies. That's what they call zombies. That's a real zombie. Somebody who's completely mindless of their own life, their own responsibilities, their own direction, and they just get pulled left and right by different people who take advantage of the fact that they are willing to put in the time and the effort to decide where they want to be. And some of them are nefarious. Some people have very nefarious means of getting what they want. They will steal money from people. They will throw people under the bus. They will do things very nefariously to get what they want. And, to me, I say, karma be with them. Karma be with them, because they'll have one of the greatest lessons they could ever learn when you hurt people like that. So what happens if we don't do these things? Well, like I said, we stay in a childlike state. We don't actually grow inside our inside, our internals, our what we call spiritual, because our thinking isn't physical. It's like a spiritual thing. They call it conscious. It's not about being religious. It's just when you're thinking about something that isn't physical. It's not real, but somehow those thoughts are tangible. You can grasp ideas and grasp concepts, right? But they're not actually real. They're not tangible until you make them real. You go into action. Let's say you have a goal. You have a goal in your mind that you write down. Well, then you put your action into it. You go after it until you obtain it. And that's, I don't want to get too off top. That's further down the discussion, but that's where the growth is, But if we don't accept those challenges when they come, if we turn away and say, this is too hard, we allow somebody else to take control of this. You're in a state of ignorance, because you're being ignorant to the fact that you're acting like a child. It's easier to be ignorant at that fact and just move ahead in life and go hide in your hidey hole and be lazy, or just be lost in your own world. And you decided that your own world is okay. But do you ever reflect on your life? Do you ever actually look at what's going on? Look at yourself as a plant. If you are a plant, over time, have you seen any kind of growth on the positive, or do you see the opposite? going the toxic direction, which is going to increase a lot of negativity, make things harder in your life, and just make things hard for yourself. That is not the direction you want to take. So that's what happens. You stay in a state of a childlike state where you're always constantly looking towards other people, and people who know this take advantage of that. Because we're very aware of this. And what happens is over time, to get to like that is what happens is early on in childhood through schooling and whatever, we get conditioned and we grow up relying on other people, and that's a system that's built in so that the other system works. The system desperately need to rely on others. It's a weird thing, but in a lot of ways it makes sense. You need people who need you, things, and need this and that. And if that didn't exist, if that state of desperateness didn't exist where you had to absolutely rely on the grocery store, on the mechanic, on this and that, and plus not only that, because you end up switching your parents for an employer, your boss becomes your parent. That's a natural transition set up. It's a condition. It's set up to work that way. And so you stay in that state, and people who are bosses, they'll act like the parents, and they'll tell you what to do, and you'll do exactly that because you left yourself without a choice. The only choice is to get away from that and do your own thing. And that's when the boy becomes a man. You take on your own financial responsibilities, your own health responsibilities, your own political responsibilities, all of that, and that's how you assume the position of man. The thing that takes away from your manhood, personhood, womanhood, how you ever want to address it, him, her, she, whatever you want to call yourself, it's all okay with me, is complaining. The more you complain, the more you're speaking out to the universe that you can't do this, that you're weak, that you're not good enough, and you're going back into that position. You're falling back into the weak position, and that's something that if you can commit to avoid complaining, to avoid going down the road of excuses, if you can commit to getting away from that, and you can include fear, if you can commit to staying away from those things that are going to be the biggest hurdles to getting to where you want to go, you're going to find yourself in a better place every day, especially if you keep honing in that positivity, and staying away from fear. And like a gardener, in your mind, you have to be the constant gardener. You check in with yourself and those thoughts that just come out, because of whatever, a bad situation triggered you, you're feeling a bit emotional, and that's gonna spawn some negative thoughts. The more you focus on those negative thoughts, the more you keep feeding into that negativity. So that's why it's important to be a constant gardener of your mind, and every day you do a little bit of gardening in your head, like, oh, these thoughts are coming in, nope, let's cut those out like weeds. What it does is if you don't do the necessary job of guarding your mind, what happens is those complaints puts you back in that position of a child, of a boy, and you're not stepping up to the plate. You're not accepting the challenge before you. You're not becoming the main character. That's what a main character does in the story. They step up to the plate, they accept the challenge, maybe not at first, and sometimes the challenge is something that's stowed upon the hero, and it's something they don't want to do. And in most cases, adulting is doing things we don't want to do. But life will call you to do them, because if you don't, you're going to fall into that state, that zombie state, the mindless state, the state that people take advantage of you, your time. They take advantage of you because you have low self-esteem. You have low self-esteem because you're not taking control of your responsibilities. And the only way you can feel better about yourself is by being responsible about your things and everything, your mental health, your physical health, your finances, your direction in life. Those things have to be in place like a carpenter building a house. These are all components of the house of the highly achieving man that you have to put in place in order to keep moving forward and keep growing. You need to have all these key components in place, like the nutrients in the soil that you need to grow vegetables in soil. These are the key components, the key nutrients that you'll find yourself growing. And these are because humans are so complex. We are very complex creatures because we have a mind and we create thoughts and images in our mind, and we're able to create those into the physical world if we put the effort into it. We need it is absolutely necessary for us to dive into these very simple terms, but dive in a complex way that gets us to actually doing them. Because if you just say, oh yeah, responsibilities, oh yeah, commitments, but if you don't dive in deep and find meaning to them and tie meaning to it, that gives you more motivation to really stick to it and do these things, then it won't make any sense. That's why it's important to talk about the things that you want to happen in your life. You focus on these topics, you work on these topics day to day. And these are all very, 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 very important key components. And I'm an example of sticking to all these things, whether, from my attitude to growing on YouTube. These are things that I'm also applying to myself, and I've already seen tremendous growth. If you go back to my January, November videos compared to now, you'll see some growth. Not just in what I do, but how I present myself, my attitude, everything, because I'm applying these things to myself, and I'm not completely there yet, but I'm getting there. I understand when I reflect every night about my day and reflect about, and like a captain of my own ship, I have a meeting and I go, okay, tomorrow, what do we need to do to get the ship further down the direction and to the point, to the coordinates we want to get to? What do we need to do? What are we facing? The high winds, the waves, a storm we got to go around. These are all the problems and challenges that come. The challenges come like waves. They never stop. You have to look at yourself like being on a boat, and you're the captain of the boat, and you're constantly trying to stay afloat. And life is going to try to sink you with problems, with the waves that come and come and come, constant waves of problems. And are you strong enough to not just stay afloat, but weather the storm? Go around the storm. That means long hauls of like going through several challenges, and for the long haul, we're talking it could be a year. That's a long haul dedication to something to like go through, and it's a very and focusing too much on something can have a toll on your health. So it's really, like I talk about burnout, one of the key components of how to litigate that so that it doesn't happen to you. It's so important to have downtime in your highly achieving man. Downtime is so important, to the point that you need to understand that you are not a machine. You need to have some downtime so you can recuperate your energy and all that stuff. So you cannot be partying, you cannot be spending your energy out later than necessary because you're feeling some way. You need to get your feelings in control so you can have the discipline and the focus and the motivation. It all just builds on itself to go after your goals, and going after your goal like a carrot on a stick is what's going to keep you going towards that point, like a dot. And you connect the dots with your goals. What the so I talked about how you lose your self-esteem, your confidence, your motivation. I talked about how you gain it. And you gain it by taking on those problems, by being the captain of your boat, and by having a solid boat. And a solid boat just means having all these key components in place that's going to help you have a really solid boat that's going to be able to weather just about every storm, if not every storm. Okay, these are the things you need in place. And the last thing I'll mention before going over the 7 key components, well, second to last, as I go over my notes, one big example that I can give you about making that leap from child to man is the movie Matrix. It's the first one where Neo is on top of the building, and they think because he's the one, he's going to be able to jump immediately over to the other side of the building without a problem. But the truth is, even if you are the one, you still have to go through the process of failure to learn, right? And so the faster you get in the game, and I'll change metaphors for a second. The game that I call the game of win or lose when it comes to problems, right? You lose, the team you're playing against is the team of excuses, right? You want to be the Michael Jordan of your own team. You want to take charge, you want to make decisions, you want to be able to think on your feet and adapt to problems as they come. And when you're there fighting the default life, you've done your training before. You've got some training under your belt when it comes to your health, your finances, all that stuff, your default life. The faster you get that in order and in place, you'll see that the quicker you'll grow. And when you're on the court, the metaphorical court of life, and dealing with these problems and fighting the other team, the team of excuses, you're going to feel more fit to take on challenges. And so that's why these key components that I'm going to go over here are so important to stay in the game and win it. You know, players practice as a team. You got to keep that in mind, that when you're going through these key components in life and you're applying them, the sooner you start applying them, it's going to be very hard at first. Anything you do is going to be difficult. But the key is to have that attitude where you keep going. And that's another thing I'll talk about in the key components. But the attitude is so important of keep going no matter what, you know. So Neo, finally in the Matrix, when he's got a little bit of training under his belt, he's got some time practicing with his teammates, and he's put to the test again, and when he's put out in the court, he's faced with this problem. The problem is, does he have enough faith in himself to know that he can absolutely do this? And that is a very good takeaway that I got from the Matrix, especially that moment. It's not that to prove or to dissuade the audience, oh, he's not the one, or he is. What it's showing me is that everybody goes through a training to get prepared. And that's another key topic. And once you're ready, it's only when you're ready you become the one, right? In your state of mind. You know, he was there present, but just because you're there physically doesn't mean you're there in the mind as one. And that's my takeaway from that part of that. And so when he finally does it, it's because he's aligned. He has the belief, he knows, he has the training to face the problem head on, and not be concerned about lacking in any way, because he's just ready. You know, he's ready, and he does it in a blink. He does it without blinking. That's how ready he was. He overcame a challenge, one of the biggest challenges, the jump, and doing that. And so what happens? Accomplishing that goal, that first big goal, that first task, filled him with self-confidence, self-esteem, more motivation to go, oh, what else can I do? You know, you start the momentum. The momentum starts behind you, and the more, that's another key component, the more you focus in on keep going, and like you found something, a niche or whatever you found, whatever it is you're working on, and you're discovering things about yourself, the more you go and practice and find things about yourself as time goes on, you grow. Because the more you do something, the less energy and time it takes you to replicate that same thing. You get better at it over time. And so it becomes less effort. And that's what happens over time. That's how you get to become a highly achieving man. It's that process of following all these key components, never quitting. And as time goes by and you keep doing the same thing, but like learning and adjusting and finding, like going through a maze, when you hit a wall, you find a direction. You hit a wall, you go to a different direction. You're constantly doing that, getting closer to your goal. And so that's what happens in life. You're just hitting walls. But hitting a wall isn't doesn't mean you need to quit. It just means you need to think about what direction you need to go. And sometimes we want to stay stubborn and keep going that direction, but then we need to realize that it's nothing's working. When nothing's working, you can't really force something to work. You can work on something, but if it goes nowhere, you need to just take a step back and think about your strategy. And that's why it's so important to reflect. You take the time every night to think about how your day went, whatever it is you're working on, what project, you reflect back what you think went wrong, what you think went right, and then you try to implement those things to the next day. And doing that cycle of reflecting, oh, this is where I failed, let me do this the next day, let me see what happens. If that fails, do it again. And you keep that cycle going. And as you go, you make these tweaks, and you'll see yourself improving little by little by little by little until you become the version that is necessary, that is basically calling for a man to take care of business. And a boy can only become a man when a man is needed. You know what I'm saying? So one last thing before I go over the key components and kind of go over my backstory and kind of go over some life lessons. The one thing, aside from fear and saying and bending down to excuses when a challenge arises, the one thing that also can be derailing is responding to a situation that calls for you to step up, but you, instead of stepping up, you allow your doubts to take control, and you don't allow yourself to even try, and so that's going to kill you. So if, well, not kill you, but it's going to kill your action, your motivation, and all that stuff. So that's where growth happens. Instead of stepping down, you step up. And when you step up, when you accomplish your goal, in a lot of ways, you're stepping over. That means you've experienced growth. In that cycle of always taking your challenges head on and obtaining your goals, your objectives consistently without fault is where the growth happens, where you put in the energy, the power behind momentum. Challenges in life will come like waves. I already said before, problem after problem. There's never a point in your life where there's not a problem. You're always required to take care of responsibilities, but a lot of times we give and assume those powers to somebody else to take care of us. But the truth is, those responsibilities exist throughout our life, through our whole lives, and it's up to us to decide when we're ready to take on those responsibilities. And sometimes we're not ready because we haven't experienced life enough, or we're too stubborn, or there's more growth in those, and these are the things that if you pour in energy and focus in, and these are the key components right here. Getting out of a dark place when you're burnt out, litigating, being burnt out, going through a heartbreak, going through a depression, getting out of a downside, finding peace through things like gardening and meditation, and being at war, not with yourself and other people, but at war with art, with the fact that when you're trying to create something or attaining a goal, it's like you're at war. Until you accomplish that thing, the war isn't over, So it keeps you a little focused on the task at hand and out of your head, gets you out of your head. The other thing is when you come up to a strategy, when you think about your life, how much time are you putting into organization and preparation? That's a key component. How another key component is community. How big is your community? How big is your support? If it's small, what can you do to make that grow, so that in the future they'll be there, they're going to support you and just be there for you. Taking failure not as a place to quit, but a place to not quit. That's key. Momentum is a key topic, and goals and focus are the last key components. And that's how you get to the upside of life, by going into and really in depth and going into the complexities of all these topics, because they require little tweaks. So let me write these down for you. Let me go over them on my board here, like I said I would. This one, I've done this on the board. I don't know if this is the best idea, but we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a shot. So the 7. The 7 key components. Okay, we got we call the downside, and to get to the upside, adjustments need to be made. And the way those adjustments happen is you look at these 7 key components in your life. And I made notes to help me out because this is it can get complicated. So the first key component, it's actually all these key components are podcasts. And if you go to my channel, I have a podcast called Discuss It with Lasso. And all these components and key components are the topics for every episode. And there's I think there's 14. So the first one is burnout, heartbreak, depression. You can even include anger, right? These are all right here on the right, and then we're going to go through all the 7 key components. That's the first one is going through and litigating all of these to get out of the negative, whether it's a burnout, heartbreak, depression, anger. You almost have to really work on this first before doing anything. The second key component, one of the other podcasts that I did, is gardening. But really there's 2 components. It's gardening and war with art, but you can really say it's finding peace. These are the stages you go from downside negative to positive upside, right? And these are broken down into 2 that I call, or you could even say 3, necessary actions for your mental health. I'm going to say 4, physical health. But we got yoga or meditation. So what happens with this is you're practicing several things. There's 2 ways to meditate, 3 ways actually. There's 1, you're allowing your emotions to go through you. You're spending that time to just process emotion, let it process. You're going, whether it's crying or whatever it is, anger. You could, have a setup where you have a way to express anger, like a boxing thing, whatever that you have set up, or whatever. It can be anything, something that you can release anger in a way that's responsible and not hurting anybody else, right? Releasing anger, releasing emotions, that's one way. Another way is to find a state of mind of presentness. And that allows you to get away from those thoughts and feelings. You're more aware of your surroundings, the present moment, your breathing. That's one way. And the other way is you practice what I call physical meditation. Basically, when you practice yoga, meditation is for your mind, yoga is for your body. And so you do these stretches and these balancing acts, essentially, that keep your body attuned to itself and to your mind, right? There's a oneness there. I'm going to add here gardening. the process of gardening is a very interesting process because, and it's another, so gardening is a podcast topic you can find under Discuss It with Lasso. But essentially, gardening has so many health benefits. Not just the fact that you're spending time in nature, it's nice, but there's actually other benefits that I go into and I talk to in depth in that podcast. But essentially, touching dirt, being out in the sun, sweating toxins, building up your immune system, eating the food that you eat versus food that you don't know has been sprayed with pesticides, things like that, you take control of that, more of your life, you take control of your food and your health. Let's see, finding peace. Oh yeah, reading. Surprisingly, reading is something that will distract you from your life and fill you in with information. So when you read like nonfiction, you read topics in mental health by experts, brain health, adulting, finances, basically self-help. You start doing that, focusing on that, you'll start and implementing those as you can. You'll start to see already that you're getting away from all of this. But the problem is with this is you can't really force yourself out of these things. It's a process. And a lot of times depression, it comes in waves. You might be out of it for a minute and then it comes really hard and it's just overwhelming and you kind of break down, but it's not like a breakdown where you completely fall apart. Sometimes you get close, but I'll say that at some point when you have a burnout, heartbreak, depression, whatever, you will experience a breakdown. It's possible for sure. That's part of how you get to this downside is experiencing that huge breakdown. Everything falls apart, But part of it is because of our attitude. It's just totally in the negative. And if you keep focusing on the negative day by day by day, it's going to snowball into something huge, out of control. And sometimes it may take something this big to make you realize what's important. And so here we go. Maybe it takes you a while to find what's important in life. So finding peace, what did I say? Yoga, gardening, reading, and physical activity. So like working out, stamina building, bicycling, running, walking, that all these things you implement weekly, and it's going to get you already moving in a faster direction away from this. As you heal, you're doing this, you're healing. We call this the healing process, right? The healing process. You're not quite ready to take on other things, but you got to get out of this first, and you can do that when you heal. And that's how you heal. It's not just medicines. You need to readjust these areas and implement these things to get healthy mentally, physically, spiritually. Doesn't mean religion. It just means your mental state is in a good state, is what I mean by spiritually, in a lot of senses, we feel guilt for things we did. So a lot of times we need to learn how to forgive ourselves. I consider that part of spirituality, part of humanity, part of being empathetic. All those things I consider part of spirituality. And so anytime we implement forgiveness in others and in ourselves, we're implementing a sort of a sort of internet of consciousness with other human beings, if you will. So the third component, there's something I call war with art, which is really part of finding peace. When I was talking about forgiveness, that's kind of part of the whole spiritual aspect of when you focus anger, things like that, on art versus people, and you focus on art and just processing your feelings and emotions through art, that's one really healthy way to process pain and to heal. So there's a podcast I go in depth about the war on art and not people. So that gets you in a better mindset. Community, key component. Now, this includes family, friends, organizations. So for me, I can tell you. Let's go to story time here. I can tell you from real life experience and things. These are things that I've gone through, real life experiences that I've come to awareness about things I lack in my life, and so these are all things that I'm doing in the moment. Community is so important. Let me tell you why. Um, like Sylvester Stallone says, and I'm sure that saying came from somewhere else, but essentially, no man is an island. You know, no man is an island. I lost my lid. It's okay. No man is an island. So if you try to be that way, you'll see you'll have trouble in life. I'm lucky. I'll be honest. I'm lucky that I have a family that supports me in a lot of ways, emotionally when I need it, mentally when I need it, but not so much because I'm pretty mentally strong, and just financially when I need it. These are areas that I'm weak in, and I've realized this, and I'm really working my butt off to be responsible. And I'm doing okay. I'm getting out of my hole, but like all holes, some are deeper than others. No pun intended in any way, but some are deeper than others, and it's harder to climb the deep ones, right? So, and being aligned with all these key components before I get to my story will help you stay away from falling into pitfalls and holes, right? That's key. Once you're out of the hole, stay away from falling into holes, right? And there's that's a process. It's part of the maintenance process of being a high achieving man by being committed and disciplined to all these things. Let me tell you a story. I'm really big into filmmaking. I went to school for it. I've been doing it my whole life. It's my passion, right? I love movies all my life. I loved acting, theater, performances, all that stuff. So here, I really tried to connect with the film community here, but I had a huge struggle with it. I don't know what. I'm not going to blame others for it. I'm not going to make excuses, but I personally had trouble with it, and it was affecting my career very negatively. Even though I have talents for it, I have a real sort of grasp and genius for it. I spent a lot of time studying this. Like I said, I have a whole library of books that I've read on screenwriting. I've gone to separate colleges for just screenwriting itself, like online, online training. But and separate training for acting. I went to separate schools for that too. Like so, I've been to many schools, many places of training, even online, like once or twice. But it's always been right, always continually learning, always growing, training. But essentially, and working. I worked in the industry for 5 years. Aside from I spent 20 years doing 25 years doing independent movies on my own, but I spent a solid 5 years working on big productions like Killers of the Flower Moon, Stillwater, what else? Reagan. I worked on outside of Oklahoma. I worked on the, the Marvelous Miss Maisel. I've worked on Tulsa King. I've worked on you name it. I've worked on a lot of stuff. You can actually check out my MDB. But anyways, I'm very motivated to do this, and I put out a movie, right? Stray Kids. That's my latest independent movie. But essentially, it's just for whatever reason, I was hitting walls with that community, and it was hurting my self-esteem. It was hurting, even though I kept going, kept going, kept going. It came to a point where it seemed pointless. Just keep going with that because it seemed tainted, and so I ended up moving out from that community and found other communities. I found a really nice community that I really fit in with at a place called Go Shows. It's a small theater in Broken Arrow where I do painting classes and hold a film festival, and sometimes other screenings and stuff. And I help out with the haunted house there. It's incredible. So October, there may be a huge surprise. I may be working with somebody famous for the haunted house. We'll see. I want to spoil it because it may not come true, but if things go well, it's going to be very interesting. But yeah, what happens? See, you find communities and you find opportunities. I found another community with the theater stage acting down at Spotlight Theater. There's a very nice community, very friendly, very supportive. And after a year of, on and off, of a year, but on and off for 4 months in the beginning of going, rehearsing, being with them, getting insights, feedback. And so after another 4 months of actually having my lines memorized and actually being on stage rehearsing with my costume and stuff and going over cues. My day before the show, or the day before, or some days before the show, I had to buy. I'm not sure what you call it, but I was shadowing the actor that I was the same character we're playing. I was shadowing him, so I can kind of see how he handled his cues and stuff and timing. And so I did that, and then I was ready. I was, and I did the show, but it was all because I had the community. And so that community helped me, check that off my bucket list. Essentially, it was a goal of mine to get back on stage, to sharpen my acting skills, and to have that, locked in. And so now in August, I have 2 shows coming up, playing that character in the show, which I'm excited. It's great to be a part of a show and have other things like the art classes that keep me afloat, financially. So yeah, so important. You cannot do without community. I have a whole podcast on that. If you go to my podcast section, you'll see that there's a whole hour dedicated to community, and how they act like pillars for you to, step up, essentially. So we talked on that, and I've kind of told you a little bit. So I found my community outside after failing to find what I thought where I felt like I should belong. I found a lot of friction. So where you think you should belong sometimes isn't where you belong. And like BB King said, go where you're appreciated. If they're not appreciating you, your talents, and whatever you bring to the table, go somewhere else. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to whatever, because it'll just get worse. Go to somewhere where they really appreciate you, and you'll find fertile ground to grow. And that's key. That's why community is key. It acts like a garden for you to grow. Let's go back to the board, shall we? So we have that community. This is the 4th component. The 4th component breaks down to 2, which is failure. Failure and the attitude of never quit. And so I have 2 podcasts, one dedicated an hour to failure, the topic of failure and the topic of never quit. So you can check that out. But essentially, you need to have that attitude in place. You need to have that locked in. You can't allow for something to force you to quit. I mean, sure, you may hit a wall, but life is like moving through a maze. You hit a series of walls, but it doesn't mean you quit. You just move a little to some other direction a little bit. You find a different way, and you find a different way by constantly thinking about your strategy, by not, if you totally stay silent, you stop working, you stop hustling, then that's when you've given up. That's when you quit, and that's when you start to go back. You start to go back here. And so that's why it's so important to have that locked in. You don't quit no matter what. And part of never quitting, right, is well, you never quit your default life, but then there's your passions and your goals and you're going to be chasing those, and you're going to need the same attitude about never quitting, about your default life, that you're going to take care of business, and then on top of that, outside your default life, your passions, your dreams, and all that stuff. Failure. How's your attitude on failure? Your attitude on how you approach failure is key. How do you approach it? Do you approach it where you view it as, oh my God, I lost and that's it, I'm a loser? Or do you view it as, oh, something about what I did was incorrect that led me to losing or not obtaining my goal? That's all it means. All it means is you need to make tweaks to how you approach something, whether it's a soccer game. Let's say a soccer game you lost. Well, go to the drawing board. Why did you lose? Maybe the defense is weak in certain areas, so you go train, and then you do that for a while, and then you get better in that area, and then when you're back in the game, you'll see if you advance, and you measure. You need to measure, always be able to measure what's going on. That's how you get out of failure completely, is you measure what's going on. You keep tabs. For me, like YouTube, for example, I have analytics. So YouTube is a big thing for me, where I'm really trying to learn, utilize, and hone in. And because I have analytics, I check it every day obsessively like a crazy person. And I use those numbers to help guide me with timing. It's almost like I'm the president of a network in my own channel, right? In my channel, I have different things going on. I'm trying to figure out the right placement, but it takes getting in there, and sometimes it's a complete failure. Like a few days ago, I hit 1,000 views. Before that, I was at 20,000. I did something wrong to cause my big jump to go down really fast. And if you view that as like, oh, you know, I lost, I'm a loser, like like you get overwhelmed by emotions and you allow yourself to give up, that's not the right attitude. The attitude is, I did something wrong, I'm trying to approach this goal, great, I have an opportunity tomorrow to see what I can change, and around the same time do something to see if there's any improvement. You constantly do that in that cycle, like a mad scientist trying to discover electricity. Like you just keep going, you keep failing, even if it's 1,000 times. Whatever that guy who invented electricity, comment his name below because I can't think of it. But essentially, that's what he did. He kept going until it happened, and it was like, oh, I put all the puzzle pieces together, and it was stuff that was already out there, but I was able to put it together in a way that was special, and now I'm gonna, take ownership of this, make money off of it, like a true capitalist. Anyways, so there's that. How do you approach failure? The other component, 5, we're getting closer to the upside, is momentum. How aware are you of your momentum? Do you know you're creating momentum? Do you know whether it's going the negative way or the positive way? How conscious are you of this? I go into depth in a podcast for an hour into that. You can check out later. Discuss it with Lasso is what it's called. So I go in depth into that. The more you can hone in on what you're doing, all these exercises, finding your community. It could take a year or two, keeping the same attitude over and over when you come to problems. Instead of facing failure as a complete loss, you look at it as an opportunity to grow and learn and experiment. Then you create momentum. You keep doing that week by week by week by week, and now you have momentum. And the more momentum you have behind you, the further away you're going to get away from this state, the downside. You're going to get away from that downside faster and faster and faster and faster. And the more you focus on this, and that's the other component we're going to get to. The other component is the focus. And this is really, it's actually, I break this down into 2 components, focus and goals. That's the other major component that's going to get you not just away from this, but I mean rocketing. You're going to be rocketing away really quickly. As soon as you get momentum behind you and you understand that process of getting momentum behind you, and you understand the things that you must stay away from that's going to kill your momentum, this becomes priority. You realize, oh, by practicing all these things, I got momentum behind you. And once you got it, you're not going to want to lose it because it's hard to create. It's hard to go, like if you go back to a depression, and that's okay, it happens. It happens. Sometimes it comes in a wave, and that's how depression works. It comes in waves. It's just how it is. You got to restart. Go have some time healing. Part of healing could be watching a movie, distracting yourself, kind of being lazy. It's okay to do that sometimes, but then pick back up. Pick back up until you realize you keep doing this process until you never feel depressed again. I'm telling you, you get to a point you don't need medicine. I mean, I smoke marijuana. You could consider that medicine. I drink coffee. That's kind of like a drug, whatever. But that's all I do as far as that goes. And so, I don't take pills for depression or anything like that, or for pain. But the whole marijuana thing is a whole topic on the side, on the side. But that's all I do. But to me, it helps me focus when I smoke. Some people get lazy, but it helps me focus. Actually, it helps with stress. It helps me get motivated because, for me, it's like a dopamine hit. I get happy immediately, and I'm ready to get back in the field. It's kind of cheating, but it is what it is. But at least that's all I do. People do other stuff worse, way worse stuff, and that's a whole other topic. How toxic chemicals can really ruin you in a bad way. Um, but once you know your goals, once you have, and I have a whole again two podcast discussions on focus and on goals specifically because the goal ends up being the carrot stick, ends up being your carrot stick where you're chasing after it. But that's why you take time to think about what direction you want to go. And once you realize you have a vision of how you see yourself, you hold on to that vision. And that's like the carrot at the end of the carrot stick, right? You keep going that direction. But and I go into depth about this, how it's good to like, yeah, you can try yourself, like in a dark room, look for a light switch and look for the answers. But you'll save a lot of time by going to a mentor who's already been successful at whatever it is you're trying to do. You just go straight to them. It'll save you so much time if you put in the effort of making friends with somebody who's already done it. Trust me, you'll save a lot of time. Because they'll be there for you. You'll be surprised how some of these people really want to help you because they like the idea of having somebody that they're kind of teaching and stuff. Anyways, and of course, focus. Right? How do you get to your goals? Well, you need focus. Like a racehorse running down a race, you have those eye covers. You're not distracted by things. Metaphorically, you stay focused. I talk about that a whole hour dedicated to that, whatever. But essentially, the more focused you are on something, the faster you're going to get there, right? It's just simple math. The more time you spent outside of obtaining your goal, the slower you're going to get there. And I talk about having a singular focus and having singular goals and singular focus and having at a time will get you quicker to where you want to be versus juggling a bunch of goals at the same time. And you're having to spend time a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. Instead, have a singular goal until you get that. And then boom, that's done. Singular goal, boom, until you get it done. Boom, 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 boom. And part of being focused is realizing what's distracting you. If it's people, problems, whatever, and that's why it's so important to have your default life in check because that's where most of your problems come from, right? So what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What am I missing? What am I missing? I feel like, I didn't go over preparation. So yeah, preparation plus organization, right? Organizing your life. That is the last seventh key component here is spending the time to actually put some thought about how you're going to approach something. I talk about how organizing your room, your abode, your office to perfection will help alleviate stress, help you find things, help keep your finances down because you don't have to keep buying things that you lose. There's all these little benefits that I talk about in the podcast when it comes to preparation and organization. You can check it out. But how key is that, right? Once you start going momentum, you're going to realize that the more prepared you are to handle tasks, the quicker you are to handling them, and the quicker you keep going. And then when it comes to organization, same thing. You're creating less hurdles in your life when you have perfect organization, when your clothes are in your closets, not all over the place. That means you're prepared. It means that you're ready for the week to come and you don't have to worry about it. When your dishes are clean and in place, you don't have to worry about it. And there's ways of handling things like that. Instead of waiting till the end, you handle them immediately. These simple things that are our default life, you have to take a kind of management control where you take immediate action on those things where then they later don't become a problem. They don't become a spin ball. It's easier to maintain a clean abode versus letting it get out of control and then spending a lot of time feeling overwhelmed and you just let things go, right? It's so much easier maintaining, even with physical activity. It's so much easier to maintain your health. It's easier to maintain everything when you're still doing the things that we call, that could be the eighth is maintenance work. That could be the eighth key component is you're always working out, eating healthy, learning stuff, reading things to exercise your brain in a lot of senses. So, and then you organize your schedule. You schedule your time. But that's what happens is naturally. What happens is when you start to feel more confident about yourself, you have more self-esteem. You're implementing all of these things. You're gonna start to naturally feel that your time has value, that wasting your time upsets you in a lot of ways. Like you don't want to waste your time. You find that your energy becomes a lot more limited, and you don't want to waste it on things that are irrelevant to your goals. These things start to happen naturally. They come about because you're just so in it to win it. Essentially, you're just in it to win it. So that's that. That's the masterclass. If you want to go and go watch all the intense, in-depth discussions about every single key component, you're welcome to. They're available right now. This is essentially the biggest overview of all the things I went over. And you stick to that. Whatever your goal you choose, you stick to a program. You stick to this program, you're going to be a highly achieving man. And people are going to think you're like an eighth wonder of the world. That's how you become, whatever it is, and you stick to this for years and years and years and years, you are the master of your craft. You're the master of your life. Not just a man, but you become the master of your life. And that's a whole other master class I probably should go into. But, if you enjoyed this, I'm glad. That's what it's for. If you learned something, that's what it's for. And I hope you check out the podcast section in my channel. Discuss it with Lasso. That's all I got for you. You can always check the live video. Check this video out whenever it's processed and up. It could take a day, but it'll be there, and you can always check it out. And for those who don't know, my name is Lasso. This is Lasso's Passions. I got lots of crazy dreams and passions, and this is what we're doing. We're pursuing them. All right. I'll see y'all later. We're growing together, step by step. Thank you. I'll see y'all later. Thank you very much.